John, we are already seeing the Japanese beetle wreak havoc on other states, right?
Yeah, Bill, it has been found on the East Coast originally. It's been there for decades now, but each year the USDA estimates Japanese beetles cause $460 million in damage to crops, gardens, lawns, and golf courses. So joining us with more on these destructive insects is James Dill. He's a pest management specialist at the University of Maine. James, thanks so much for being with us this morning.
No problem. Good to be here.
Good to have you. Now, folks in Maine have been dealing with Japanese beetles for years now. When I lived there, they wreaked havoc on my tomato plants. What kind of damage do they do to crops and backyards every year there in Maine?
Well, they're a double threat. The larvae of the beetle is called a white grub, and the Japanese beetle lays its eggs in lawns. And as the grubs develop, they eat the roots of grass, and you end up with dead lawns. So you can start out, of course, now you've got this problem in the backyard, and you got all these grubs out there. And then the next thing you know, raccoons and skunks and crows are out there digging it up. So you get up in the morning and it looks like, you know, a bunch of bad golfers had come through, and your lawn is all divots. So that's one problem. And then the adults, when they emerge, they have a huge appetite for all kinds of different crops. Matter of fact, a lot of people here in Maine call them Japanese bean beetles because they really, really love bean plants. And also grapes and raspberries are some of their favorite hosts. And they'll get on almost anything. As a matter of fact, this year, for the first time, I saw them feeding on azaleas and actually rhubarb, which, you know, there's not a lot of things certainly that attack rhubarb. The leaves. So they do have a voracious appetite and can do a major amount of damage.
Well, experts at Washington State University here in our state say without intense intervention, the Japanese beetle could spread throughout our state. So what should we be doing here right now about this?
Well, I think one of the big things is keep track of them, because one of the things that we did when we first got them here in the state of Maine, they started in southern Maine and worked their way up. So I did a lot of trapping throughout the state of Maine, because at first they were quarantinable pests that no one else wanted them. So produce and products and that type of thing couldn't be shipped out of areas here in the state of Maine that had Japanese beetle. So we did a lot of trapping to make sure we knew the range of where they were, so that we actually had early on some counties that were Japanese beetle free, so they were free to send their products any place, meaning like nursery stock and that type of thing. So I think the big thing you got to do is stay on top of it and have people be looking for it, reporting it to your Department of Agriculture, the university, whoever's going to be tracking it for the state, and just try to stay ahead of it that way. They're control-wise, most people don't bother to actually control them in their backyards, other than very seriously hand picking. We do have an interesting a parasitic fly that gets on them, lays a little white egg on the back, just behind the head, on the pronotum. And what we do is we tell people, when you're out there picking the Japanese beetle, or brushing them into a bucket of soapy water, if you see one that has that little white spot, or maybe two or three of them, you leave that one alone and let it stay, because those flies, called the winsome fly, of course, they kill the beetle and emerge and keep on laying eggs on other beetles. So it's one of the things that out here we want to make sure that we make sure they're around. Other than that, there's pesticide sprays that can be used in the lawn. There's pesticide sprays. We use nematodes also for control. So there are control measures that can be done, but especially in the lawn, it needs to be identified, because there's a whole white grub complex that feeds on lawns, and treatment can be a little different depending on what white grubs you have feeding on your lawn.
All right, it's been a problem insect in Maine for years, and now it appears to be here as well. James Dill from the University of Maine, thanks so much for joining us this morning.
You're most welcome.